All right, so we are ready for lesson 1 in unit 7 now, the data analysis section. We are focusing on central tendency and dispersion. So this might seem really complicated to some of you guys, but when you are about to see what it really is, you're probably going to be quite relieved. So making sure that you have your handout handy, we'll be able to fill out the vocab to start. So at the very beginning, we have the measure of central tendency, which is really just a number that marks a middle of the data. And middle is in quotations because it won't necessarily mean the exact middle each time. The first type of measure of central tendency is the mean, which we really know is just the average, and you can find this by finding the sum of the data values divided by the number of values. Another one is the median, which is the number in the middle of a set of data values, assuming they are in order from least to greatest. And the last one is the mode, which is the number that occurs the most often. A lot of you already know this as mode is the most. So when we go about doing problems, we want to make sure that all of our data is in order from least to greatest. That should be the first thing that you do every time. So when we go to do example A, it says that assume the girls' soccer team scored 0, 1, 2, 6, 1, and 3 goals in the last 6 games. We need to find the mean, median, and mode. So again, your first step, make sure that all of those numbers are in order from least to greatest. Okay, we're ready to find the mean, median, and mode. The mean, as I said, is finding the average. You want to add up all of the values, and then we will divide it by how many values there are. So you want to find out what 0 plus 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 6 is, and we can see that that is 13, right? We then have to take 13 and divide it by how many pieces of data there are. In this case, there were 6 games, so we take 13 divided by 6, and it is a little bit of an ugly repeating decimal, but it would approximately be 2.2. So our mean is 2.2. The median is really just finding the middle of the data. So what you want to do is take these values when they are in order of least to greatest and eliminate the smallest, then the biggest. And then again, eliminate the smallest, then the biggest. And if you are left with 2 numbers, then you want to find the perfect middle between them. So in this case, the perfect number between 1 and 2 is 1.5. So our median is 1.5. Finally, we have to find the mode, which is what number occurs the most. 1 occurs twice, so that means our mode is 1. For problem B, we have the selling prices of 5 houses in one neighborhood. They were the following prices. We need to find the mean, median, and mode. So again, we want to make sure that we put these in order from least to greatest. And then we are ready to find our mean, our median, and our mode. So when we go about finding our mean, again, we have to make sure that we can add up all of these together and find our total. When we do that, you end up with $824,000 when you add them all up together. And then before you count that as your answer, you want to remember to divide it by how many pieces of data there are. In this case, there are 5 houses. So we take that 824,000 divided by 5, and you get $164,800. That is our mean. For the median, we have to, again, find our center value. So when they're in order, least to greatest, you eliminate the biggest, then the smallest, the biggest, then the smallest, until you are left with the center term. In this case is $150,000. That is your median. For our mode, again, we want the one that occurs the most. And in this case, nothing repeats. So our mode would be none. There is none. Not in this case. Nothing repeats. For the next part of this, we are discussing range, more specifically dispersion. And dispersion is the spread of the data. Okay, that is the span. The data is how wide it goes from here to here. How wide is that data spread? Okay, and in order to find that, you are finding the range, which is the highest value subtracted by the lowest value. For example, C, we've got 30 people at a picnic. The youngest person is 3 years old. The oldest person is 79 years old. We need to find the range of the ages. So it's really as simple as taking the oldest person and the youngest person and subtracting them. And then that means there is a 76-year spread among the people at that picnic. So that could be the difference, analyzing that spread, between knowing whether this is a high school reunion picnic or whether it is a family reunion picnic. Obviously, a wider spread shows multiple generations, and there would be a wider spread of the ages. Okay? Moving on to our example D, we got a company that asked 7 employees to turn in their receipts for travel expenses. The expenses were separated into transportation and lodging. Part 1 asks, which was more spread out, the transportation expenses or the lodging expenses? So, analyzing them separately, we have to make sure that we are finding the span or the spread or the dispersion of transportation and then finding it again for lodging separately. Okay, they are unrelated. So for transportation, you need to find the highest expense and the lowest expense. We will take those, we will subtract them, and you will get 701. Doing the same thing for lodging, we find the highest and the lowest, subtract them, and we get 301. So which was more spread out? Obviously the one with the wider spread, the larger number, which is 701, which was the transportation costs. So the transportation costs are more unpredictable based off of the data that we have here. Lodging has a smaller spread, so it's more predictable because it's within a smaller range. Taking a look at part 2, the company is planning to send another employee on a business trip, and they want to know how much money in all should the company expect the employee to spend on the trip. So we want to make sure that we are analyzing, again, these separately because they do not affect each other directly. They are unrelated. So analyzing the transportation, we need to figure out what's the average cost that they're spending on transportation. So we're going to take all of these values, we're going to add them together, and since we are finding the average, that really means we are finding the mean. We add all these together, and using your calculator, you can figure out that when we add them together, it is $4,017 divided by these 7 employees. And you get that transportation on average costs about $573.86. Lodging, again, we have to take them all, add them together, and we get a total of $3,266 divided by the 7 employees gets you about a total of $466.57. So that is how much the averages are separately. But if they're trying to figure out how much an employee is going to spend, we need to add those together. And that means an employee is going to spend approximately $1,040 if they send another employee on a trip.